Well, hi there everyone and welcome to the Freeze-Dried Foodie. Today's video is a highlight reel of 4 of my very favorite low-carb meal in a jar recipes. Now all of these videos are currently up on my channel and most of them are in my cookbook as well. Drew and I love eating low-carb. We feel really good when we do it. And I hope these recipes help to inspire you to stay on your health journey, especially if you like to try new recipes with freeze-dried food. The main stars of this recipe are the sausage crumbles, the eggs, and the cheese. The supporting cast is the milk, butter, and sour cream powder. Those will give these egg bites the right texture and improve the base flavor, that and along with the seasonings. And all the rest of these ingredients are just extras. You can put as few or as many as you like in this. I've added some spice with the green chilies, some sweetness with the red bell peppers and the tomatoes, some kind of earthy umami notes with the mushrooms. The onions will round out the flavor, give you some savory notes. And the broccoli, it's just a bonus veg. I think it's lovely in here, but you can definitely customize this to fit your family's preferences. You can think of these bites as maybe mini crustless quiches and then go for it. Now, I was trying to keep this low carb, but if you don't mind the carbs, you could definitely add some of our potato dices to this as well. I think that would be delicious. Now, I completely filled up this quart jar with my extras, but these breakfast bites are good no matter what because our eggs and sausage and cheese are terrific. So if you start there, you're going to have a winner of a recipe on your hands. Once you've added as many extras as you like, I suggest adding an oxygen absorber to your jar. This will help it stay fresh for a long time on your pantry shelf. So the idea here is to try out this recipe, and if you like it, assemble several of these jars at once. That way you'll have these ready to go whenever you need them. And they make great gifts too, perfect for sharing. Okay, let's cook. Now these take about half an hour from the jar to the table, but you hardly have to do any work at all. Remove that oxygen absorber, empty the contents of the jar into a medium-sized bowl, and then add 2 cups of water. Give it a really good stir to hydrate those ingredients. Remember, they're freeze-dried ingredients, so they're completely dry, and you have to add the water back in there when you cook them. And just let that sit and hang out for a while you preheat your oven. That time just sitting will help refresh all those ingredients and helps to soften them up. After about 10 minutes, you can fill your prepared muffin tin. And I got a dozen egg bites here. And then bake them at 350 Fahrenheit for about 17 to 20 minutes. I think mine baked for 19 minutes. Now they puff up just like fresh eggs would when you bake them, and then they'll sink down as they cool. A serving is probably 2 to 3 egg bites per person, depending on who you're feeding and how hungry they are. I ate 2.5. My daughter only ate 1, so what do I know? But don't they look wonderful? They were so good. If you're interested in purchasing any of the Thrive Life freeze-dried foods you see featured in my videos, I'll include my shopping link in the video description box. I call this food groceries for now or groceries for later. Most of the food has a 25-year shelf life, making it ideal for long-term storage. And it's also good for an entire year on the shelf after opening, making it perfect for everyday cooking to cut down on spoilage and food waste. That's how we have saved money since we started cooking with Thrive Life. They say the most expensive food you buy is the food you throw away. How true is that? This next recipe for cheesy chicken poblano soup is a personal favorite of mine for low-carb living. You don't even miss the carbs because it's full of flavor and it's super satisfying. I named this recipe before I knew what kind of chili peppers Thrive used, and as it turns out, they're not actually poblanos. They're green chili peppers, but it's delicious no matter what. I think you'll love this one. I originally found this recipe from a cookbook author by the name of Carolyn Ketchum, and she has a site called All Day I Dream About Food. So credit where credit is due. Thank you, Carolyn, for the idea here. Yeah, that happened. Adventures in the Kitchen with Kara. Okay. Anyway, I did change her recipe just a little bit, but she has some really great keto-friendly low-carb recipes on her site. And this recipe, in its original form, is very low-carb. And the way I've written it here, it stays very low-carb. It's keto-friendly. But you can make it very carbolicious if you want to with the toppings you add at the end. And we'll talk about that later. If there are any spices in here that you don't care for, like cilantro or something like that, feel free to just, leave that out. Now, having said that, I would not leave out the cumin in here because that's kind of the signature flavor of this soup. Cumin is not spicy. It is kind of earthy and smoky, but not spicy. If I was going to store this for the long term, I would have wiped off my rim. Look how dusty that is. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to take some pictures and cook it up for you. This is what you would store on your shelf. I think because of the cream cheese powder in there, probably not more than a year. By the way, I ordered that cream cheese powder on Amazon. But this would last a good long time on your shelf. And then when you're ready to prepare it, all you really have to do is add water. Now, since I'm making a pint-sized jar, I was just needing 2 servings of this, so I wanted to do a pint-sized jar. I'm just going to add a few cups of water. I like my soup rather brothy with like kind of a lot of liquid. So I went ahead and added 4 cups of water so I could have a good amount of liquid. If you don't like it that brothy, you could just do 3. And then just go ahead and adjust your seasonings at the end. If you do 4 like I did, you might have to add a little bit of salt to it. I include the full recipe in my video description box. So if you are wanting to make this for, let's say, more people, I was making it for 2. If you wanted to serve maybe more like 4, you would definitely double this and put it in a quart-sized jar. This soup does not take very long to cook. After you bring it to a boil and simmer it for about 15 minutes, it's ready. Because there's cheese in there, I would stir it every 5 minutes or so, just so it doesn't stick on the bottom. And definitely give it a taste. Adjust your seasonings. I decided to go for it in the spice department. I went ahead and put some red pepper flakes in there. Oh, y'all, I thought it was really tasty. Now, this is the part where you could make it really carb full, is if you add the crushed tortilla chips, which, by the way, I did a little bit, and they were so good. My husband did that. When he came home, he decided he wanted this for dinner, and he added crushed tortilla chips. And he said, fantastic. Add you some cheese or some sour cream, and it is so delicious. I hope y'all enjoy this recipe. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Butter chicken was my very first attempt at making anything that would be considered Indian cuisine. It's easy and it's addictive. It's my best friend Amy's favorite recipe. Once you try it, you'll understand. It's amazing. I'm starting with a 1.5 pint jar just because I only want a couple of servings of this. We actually got 3 servings from this. I'm adding a 1.5 cups of chicken dices. And then we'll start to build what's going to flavor the sauce. So we've got chopped onions, garlic, and then the Thrive Life tomato powder. The only ingredient in that is tomatoes. Now here are some of the spices. These are different than what I usually cook with, all right? Ginger, turmeric, and then, salt. Okay, that's pretty normal. And then the combination here of chili powder, cinnamon. Garam masala is an optional ingredient. I just happen to have some of it, so I thought I'd include it. And then some cayenne, just for a little bit of heat, some kick. That's optional. Now you do need to keep your heavy cream powder separate because that is added later on in the process. And I decided to go ahead and tell you right here that you can do a cornstarch slurry to thicken this up. So go ahead and do a little baggie with a tablespoon of cornstarch in it. And then you can add your oxygen absorber and get your lid and your ring on there, and that's it. It's a really simple dish to put together. All right, so this is what you would store on your pantry shelf. And the next time I do this, I'm going to make several of these because this is amazing. When you're ready to make it, go ahead and get out a large skillet or a Dutch oven or whatever you have, but you need to preheat your skillet this time because what we're going to do is we're going to saute in butter, all right? It's butter chicken. You have to add butter here. So I started with just a couple tablespoons of butter, but I added more later on. You need at least 4 tablespoons of butter for this. And you can go ahead and open your jar, set that baggie of heavy cream to the side. We'll prepare that later. All right, once your butter has melted, go ahead and add your spices and your chicken to that. What we want to do first is toast those spices. So they need to combine with that butter and they will start to make your kitchen smell incredibly wonderful. Those spices are fat soluble, and so when they hit that heat and that fat, they will really wake up. They'll come alive and you will have a fantastic butter chicken on your hands here if you go ahead and you saute those spices in some butter. Now, only maybe a minute or 2 is all you need on that, and then add the water because you don't want to burn the garlic or the onions. So go ahead and add 2.5 cups of water here and just give it a nice stir, and you'll want to bring that to a boil. I had my heat on about a medium high. I left my heat at probably a little over medium or so. What you want to do is you want to reduce that. Get your chicken nice and tender. Meanwhile, while that's reducing, you can go ahead and blend up your heavy cream powder in some water. Add about a cup of water to that and go ahead and blend it to get it nice and combined. You want it really smooth. All right, this is what your butter chicken will look like once it's reduced by at least half. There's probably not more than about maybe a cup or a cup and a quarter of liquid down in there. Now's the time to add that heavy cream and just give it a really good stir. And once it's heated through, go ahead and taste it and adjust for seasonings. I added just a little bit of salt to mine. Bring that up to a simmer, and then you can add your cornstarch slurry. So that's 1 tablespoon of cornstarch, 2 tablespoons of water. You have to combine that cornstarch with cool water. If you put it in the hot liquid, it will clump up and it won't dissolve. So make the slurry first and then pour it in. Before long, that will be nice and thickened up. And if you're like me and you've forgotten to make your rice, having something like that comes in handy, I'll tell you that. I keep those just in case I'm in a pinch, and it's a really good pouch of rice. So it's ready to serve up at this point. Like I said, you usually serve this with rice, and all I had to do was heat that for 90 seconds in the microwave and I had rice, jasmine rice. I do like to sprinkle this with scallions. All right, there it is, our butter chicken. It's a beautiful dish. I can't even describe how fantastic the kitchen will smell when you make this. It's so aromatic. The flavors are deep and complex. Oh, I hope you guys love it. This low-carb pizza recipe gets rave reviews for a reason. It's spectacular. Thrive Life zucchini powders up beautifully to make the zucchini flour for the crust. And zucchini flour acts a lot like coconut flour if you're familiar with that for low-carb baking. This one is well worth the effort. Hope you enjoy it. I am using a quart-sized jar to put all of this stuff in, but before I put it in the jar, I'm going to blend several things for this recipe today. I'm using 2 kinds of cheese in the crust. I'm using mozzarella and cheddar. The mozzarella has a nice mild flavor, and the cheddar has a little bit more flavor to it, and I like the combination of both of them. And I pulse them in the blender, and you need to do that because you want them to refresh really quickly, and it will take too long to refresh if you didn't pulse them in the blender. So go ahead and blend those up. And I did want to flavor the crust. You know, you don't want it to just taste like zucchini. So I put some Italian type seasonings in there, onion powder, garlic powder, freeze-dried basil, and salt. The eggs here serve as the binder. And then I'm using 2 full cups of our zucchini to make the flour. So I put that into my big blender. And see, the freeze-dried zucchini, it just powders beautifully in that blender. So it really does turn into something that just resembles flour. It will soak up water or moisture really well. So it works great. All right, now I'm done with the crust ingredients. Now I'm starting on the toppings. So you can put whatever toppings you want on your pizza. I'm making a supreme, so I've got meat, I've got veg, but you could do whatever you like. I mean, you could do all vegetable pizza or all meat. You could store some shelf-stable bacon, shelf-stable pepperoni next to your jar. It's totally up to you. I'm doing 2 kinds of meat, 2 kinds of bell peppers, mushrooms, onions, and I just like all of it. I do suggest a lot of toppings because you want to give this pizza plenty of pizza flavor. Go to town, pick a lot of toppings, and put them in your jar. Now this Thrive Life tomato sauce, it's yummy, but it's not very low carb. So if you're really carb conscious, I would suggest you use just a jarred sauce like a Rayo's brand marinara or something like that. But you can use this if you like, and I enjoyed it. And this is the jar that you could store on your pantry shelf and just keep it for whenever you need it. I have several pizza recipes on my channel. I'll link them in the description box below in case you want to do a different type of crust. I've got a low-carb tortilla crust pizza and a regular pizza crust in a skillet, as well as a gluten-free one. So I'll link those below. When you're ready to make this, you're going to want to get out 3 different things: a medium-sized bowl, a medium-sized skillet, and a container with some hot water in it. So your tomato sauce powder goes straight into the hot water. and then you stir that up, and that's all there is to it. That's the sauce. You don't even have to add any seasonings to it. It's really yummy. But it will be a little bit thick and kind of clumpy at first, but it dissolves with some stirring. All right, next in your jar is the pizza toppings, and I just dumped that bag into a skillet and set it to the side because I really wanted to get to the crust first. Into a medium-sized bowl, I dumped all of the crust ingredients, and then I'm going to add just half a cup of hot tap water to that. That's all you need is half a cup. And at first you're going to think, oh, that's not enough water. But it really is. Just be patient, stir, and you'll see how quickly that zucchini flour soaks up that water, and the cheese doesn't need much liquid in order to refresh. So that's really all the liquid you need is half a cup, and you'll just stir that, and there you have it. That's the crust. That's the dough for the crust. And it does need a little bit of time to refresh. That cheese needs to soften so it doesn't just burn in the oven. Give it about 10 minutes or so. I covered it with plastic wrap and just set it to the side. Meanwhile, I got my pizza pan ready. I'm using a pizza stone, and I do suggest that you use parchment paper. Whatever kind of pan you get, put some parchment paper on it because we have a bunch of cheese in this crust and it'll tend to stick if you don't line your pan with parchment paper. Now it's time to shape the crust. So I just got out a spatula and I shaped it into something that resembled something round. Mine was kind of oval shape. You want it pretty good and thin. Mine was between 10 and 12 inches diameter. I kind of tried to do a little bit of an edge, a crust edge. And then I baked that at 350 for about 18 minutes. And while that bakes, you can get your toppings ready. Now, this is an optional step. I like to do it because I like the taste of sauteed vegetables, but you don't have to do this. All you really need to do is put those toppings into a bowl and add some hot water, stir it and let it sit. That's really all you need to do because the meat's already cooked. The vegetables are going to be raw, but they're fine to put on a pizza just like that once they're refreshed. But I prefer the taste of sauteed vegetables, so I go ahead and refresh mine in water, let that water cook off, and then I saute them in some oil. Olive oil or avocado oil, some sort of oil. And this is a preference thing. This is just how I like my toppings. I like them better when they're sauteed. So that's what I chose to do. Meanwhile, the crust is ready, and this is what you're looking for, a good brown crust. But here's a very important step. You need to cool the crust. Let it cool for 10 minutes at least. Let it cool because you want that cheese to harden and form a barrier against the moisture of the sauce. That way your crust doesn't get too soggy. Now I'm adding regular shredded cheese from the refrigerator because I had some I needed to use up, but you could totally use freeze-dried mozzarella here. Just put it in a little jar next to your pizza jar. About a cup of mozzarella is all you're going to need. All right, I suggest using lots of toppings because this pizza needs to taste like pizza. The way it will taste like pizza is if you put a bunch of things on top of it. So I'm going to suggest that whatever flavors you like on your regular pizza, do on this pizza. I'm talking lots of meat and vegetables. I'm putting some extra Parmesan cheese. That is Italian seasoning. I'm also putting some red pepper flakes and a good drizzle of extra virgin olive oil. All of those things are going to help your pizza taste more like pizza and less like zucchini pizza, if you know what I mean. So bake that at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for another 10 minutes or so till your toppings are all melted and browned. And that is what you have after it bakes. Isn't that lovely? It's a beautiful pizza. And after a couple minutes, you can slice that up. I love a ranch drizzle on my pizza, so that's what I put on here. And I also had a good amount of basil out in my container out back, so I put fresh basil and the ranch drizzle. And y'all, this turned out so good. And I wanted to show you, it is pick-upable. It's a little bit floppy. You might have to use two hands, but it is pick-upable. And see the bottom of the crust? It kind of browns the bottom, the cheese and the zucchini. It's really a crust. It's a pizza crust, believe it or not. Yummy, yummy, yummy. It's delicious. This pizza fed 2 of us, and it was fantastic. Highly recommend. If you want to try something that's gluten-free and low carb, this is a good option for you. All right, guys, thanks for watching. I appreciate you. God bless you. And until next time, y'all, take care and keep thriving.